Hello everyone, Trophy Wine Hunter. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm doing a video to explain the crafted in BC wines. And this may be only interesting to people in BC, but I think it's relevant to other people, particularly in the US and Canada, who might see this crafted in BC and what this is all about. And I think my spin on things is a little bit more unique than other people. But I always encourage differences of opinions as long as they're logical and polite. And so just hear me out on this in terms of my spin on things. And I'm just trying to explain it to people what this is. So you may see in the BC liquor stores, especially in our market, in the next little while and for the next year or so, these crafted in BC wines. So what does this mean? Crafted in BC wines are made by local British Columbia wineries using premium out-of-province grapes sourced from other territories. Sometimes it can be Ontario, sometimes it's Washington and California and Oregon. It may be as far as Chile. And why do BC wineries have to do this? Especially the Okanagan region here, one of our major wine regions in BC, has had a really difficult couple of years. 2022, there was a lot of fires in the region, and that took out a lot of the grapes. But in January in 2024 was really bad. There was a prolonged cold snap with temperatures of like -20, which caused widespread vineyard damage in particularly the Okanagan and the Similkameen regions. And as a result of that, 90% of the grape crop was lost, but more importantly, about 15% of the vines were actually destroyed. So that significantly impacted the growth of the wineries. Now, it's really important to note that that is only one of the regions. So the region that I will be visiting later on this summer, the Cowichan Valley, was not affected at all. And there are certain other wine regions and certain wineries that were not affected at all. But one of our major regions, the Okanagan Valley, was particularly affected, and many of the wineries are affected. And many of the wineries that are affected are smaller wineries. So if they have no grapes to sell, obviously they're going to be very difficult for their business. So our governing body here, the VQA, or the Wine Growers Association, said, well, you know, we should be able to allow people to take grapes from other places and produce it, and that's what they're producing. They're producing what they call crafted in BC wines, which is a label that identifies that these are not BC grapes. And the intent of this is that it's only temporary for a year, but there's no guarantee of that. I've heard some wineries kind of commit to 1 year, but there's nothing in writing. And, you know, we don't know how long this will affect the BC Okanagan wineries. And also, we don't know in 2025, 2026, if there'll be similar problems. So this is the reason for it. And now here's my analysis of the whole situation. Firstly, I really feel bad for those businesses that were affected, especially the small wineries. Because what do? If you have no grapes to sell, you have to, do something to save your business. So I totally understand from a business perspective why they want to do this. And by no means are they trying to misrepresent or cheat the public. They are, from what I've seen, all the wines that are these crafted in BC wines are very clearly labeled that these are not BC grapes. So there's no misleading of people of that. Having said that, I can understand the hesitation that many people outside of BC would have in buying these grapes or buying these wines, because if you want to try BC wines, wouldn't you want to try wines that are grown in, or grapes that are grown in BC? If you wanted to try just Oregon, or wines that are made from grapes from Oregon or Washington or whatever, why don't you buy those wines? So I can understand the hesitation that other people would have to buy these wines. As an example, let's say Bordeaux one year had a huge bad crop, and everything got decimated, all their vines got decimated. And then Bordeaux said, hey, listen, for this year, guys, we're gonna go and buy grapes from BC and label them as Bordeaux, grown in Bordeaux or crafted in Bordeaux, and we still would like you to buy it. Most people in BC would say, well, I'm not buying that because I could just buy BC wines. And so I can understand the hesitation from other people in the world. So from my perspective, I think as a BC person, you might want to support these wineries because it's a difficult thing for them. I think the real problem with crafted in BC wines is that you can't have it both ways. So you can't kind of say, hey, buy BC wines because of our terroir and distinctiveness, and then in bad years say, well, because we don't have enough grapes, we're going to take other places, so it's the same. We're going to be able to take grapes from other places in the world and recreate what BC wines are like. Because if you could do that, then there's not that distinctiveness, of course, of the BC wines, and it goes against everything we know about terroir and things like that, if you could just recreate BC wines. And so to a certain extent also I understand the economic argument. I feel bad for these wineries, but from a BC resident's perspective, that's a great thing to help out these wineries, these grown in BC or Canadian businesses. But from a wine lover's perspective, it goes against everything that we know about terroir and distinctiveness of places. Because if you can just take grapes from everywhere in the world and just, blend it with your own winemakers and then call it a product of Canada, a product of Argentina, that goes against the whole sense of why we do all these studies about wines and the soils, etc., etc. So that's kind of the dilemma I have in terms of these crafted in BC wines. I have tasted some of them, and I've talked to some people that have been producing these wines, trying to be with an open mind, because one of the questions I have for them is, well, how does this, you're taking grapes from everywhere in the world, and how does that, how do you make it into a BC wine? Particularly, this may be difficult if what they are getting over here in Canada is already the actual juice. So that means the grapes have already been fermented and that all you're getting is the juice. That's much more difficult. If you're actually bringing over grapes, that might be a little bit more you can do with it. But ultimately, if they could produce a BC wine with grapes from somewhere else, that goes against the whole concept of why do we even grow grapes in BC. So that's kind of the issue they have with this short-term problem of all these the shortage of grapes in BC. And so the danger is that if you do this one year and it's successful, there is no guarantee that they won't do it again, and that will arguably lose the distinctiveness of BC wines and the kind of the value of BC wines. Because again, if you can reproduce BC wines by having grapes from other places, then we have why is it so good? Why is it distinct? I've had these crafted in BC wines, and again, not blind, but in my mind, I think I could tell a difference between a BC Riesling and or Okanagan Riesling and something that's created somewhere else. Now, maybe I'm wrong. So I try to judge the wines on the quality of the wines, and perhaps I am biased, but the wines that I have tasted that are crafted in BC wines, from a purely wine consumer's perspective, I don't think give the value. So my kind of preference in this time, not that I'm against these wines, is to buy wineries that actually have survived. And maybe it's a good opportunity for us, for example, to try Cowichan wines that haven't been affected, that don't get as much attention as Okanagan wines. I know my view might be a little bit controversial, and people say, well, Trophy, you're not being, a promoter of BC wines. That's not the case. I think I have to be a promoter of wines, and I have to kind of just tell it like how I see it, which may not be right all the time anyways. It's just a point of view. But how I approach it is, I think crafted in BC wines, I understand the concept. I feel for those wineries that did not or were not able to produce grapes in 2024. I totally understand the market, the idea around it. And I think as a BC resident, if you want to support these businesses that are in trouble, go ahead and buy the crafted in BC wines. If you taste them and you think that they are of the same quality as the wines they were producing in VQA, then go buy them. I think that's the thing. My kind of beef is that I don't think they're as distinctive as BC wines, and that's probably why I buy BC wines. If I was to buy BC wines, I buy them for the quality and their distinctiveness and their value. And I think there are wineries which I will be highlighting that are not affected by this crafted in BC or these wineries. And in particular, I'll be looking at some Cowichan Valley wines, but also a lot of the grape varietals or the wines, crafted in BC wines are actually white wine grape varietals, which I think are some of the best of BC. Like that's what BC really produces, really great, affordable white wines in the categories of Gewürztraminer, Riesling, Pinot Gris. Those are really great values for BC, and arguably, in my mind, these are not reproducible just by taking grapes from somewhere else and trying to craft a wine that's BC. So that's in a way a good thing for BC. If it would be easy for us at any given time to replace these wines with grapes from other places, then there's no distinctiveness. There's no reason for BC wines. But I think it's a good thing that, in my mind, these crafted in BC wines don't really taste like, or there is a distinction between them and VQA wines that are created from grapes from BC. That's a good thing in my mind. That means that there's distinctiveness. That means there's value in BC wines. So I hope this video has been enlightening and useful and can be used as a resource and hopefully presents a very level argument or understanding of the crafted BC wines. And again, my takeaway is if you're a BC resident and you feel that you need to support these wineries, this is the best way to do so. As a wine consumer, taste them, and if you think they are of good value, that's great. But from my perspective, I think I would take an opposite approach, which is maybe focus, instead of the wines that you normally buy from the Okanagan Valley, maybe focus on other BC wineries or BC wine regions that you have never focused on, and maybe just take a year off and give your business to those wineries, which are still BC businesses, and try them out also. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Until next time, happy drinking.